So I'm absolutely delighted to be chairing this next session, which biasly I think is the best session in the retreat. And this is to welcome 5 of our incredible Dementia Research Leader Fellows to the stage. And this is a peer panel for you really to ask questions about anything you're interested in about their careers, about their journey so far. So I'd really like to encourage you all to ask as many questions as possible in this session. We're really going to prioritize your questions as part of this session. But I'm going to kick us off and ask a couple of questions of the panelists just so that you can get to know them all. So we do have roving mics that are going to be running around. So when you do want to ask a question, please just raise your hand and we'll come to you as quickly as we can. So without further ado, I'm going to go to Joe first. And if you could give us an introduction about who you are, what you're working on, how you came to be a dementia research leader, and then we'll just go down the line.
Sure.
Over to you, Joe.
So hi, everyone. My name's Jo Jackson. As you've just heard, I'm a dementia research leader. I'm also the first recipient of the Carol Jennings Fellowship. And basically, I'm working on identifying vulnerable synaptic components, so the components of the small connections in the brain that allows neurons to communicate, and mechanisms of their vulnerability, and then how we can treat them with either new or repurposed drugs. A quick idea about my journey here. I was in industry for 8 years. I then decided to leave industry and make the slightly unusual move back to academia. And I've been at Imperial for 4.5, 5 years now. And as I said, now a dementia research leader. Thanks.
Good morning. I'm Leeanne McGurk. I'm at the University of Dundee. And my lab is interested in understanding how proteins become misaggregated in disease. We use a lot of biological systems that start with the fruit fly. I know that some of you heard of that research in our public participation meeting earlier. But we also use assays in cells in a dish, as well as neurons that have been grown in a dish. And we translate our findings into post-mortem tissue. So we do the full spectrum of disease models. I won my fellowship last year. Prior to that, I had moved to Dundee in 2019 to start my lab. I became a Springboard Fellow of the Academy of Medical Sciences, which really allowed me to start building up my laboratory. I then applied for senior fellowships and won this one, which was absolutely fantastic, and have gone on to win other research grants, really based on having this position that Alzheimer's Society have given us.
Hi, good morning. My name is Hugo Fernandes. I am also a dementia research leader at the University of Oxford. My research is essentially focused in trying to understand the role of fats or lipids in neurodegeneration. So it's really trying to highlight what is the role of these fats in cells and different types of cells, mostly focused in neurons and also some glial cells, but really trying to understand, are they dysregulated in any way across some of these diseases? And if they are, what is the role? And could they be a target for intervention in some way? And the idea of my research is really to try to look at this in the intersection between Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and DLB, because some lipids are dysregulated, or we have some evidence at least that they seem to be a common dysregulation across some of these disorders. My research path is fairly traditional. I came to the UK to do a PhD. I stuck around for a postdoc, and this was at Oxford. Then I moved away for a few years to Cambridge because I wanted to learn new technologies. And then I came back, a couple of years ago when I started my lab with the support of the Society Fellowship in September last year.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Ryan. I'm based at the University of Manchester. My research is focused on fronto-temporal dementia and motor neuron disease as well, which is very linked to FTD. And I'm particularly interested in the role of microglia and inflammation in FTD and MND. I'm interested in what causes changes in microglial activity and inflammation, and also what are the downstream consequences of those changes for neuronal function, and do they contribute to neurodegeneration? My career path has also been quite traditional. My background's in neuroscience, and I had a brief trip to industry, shall we say, between my master's and my PhD. Perhaps wasn't the best representation of a career in industry, because I was a low-level analyst in a drug development company, but hated it and couldn't wait to get back to academia. So I moved to Manchester for my PhD, and I stayed there for a PhD postdoc, Alzheimer's Society Junior Fellowship, and now the DRL Fellowship, which I started in October.
Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Kamen Tsvetanov at the University of Cambridge, a senior research fellow there, as well as Dementia Research Leader Fellow. Our work focuses on the very early stages of neurodegeneration leading up to the symptomatic stage of dementia. We have heard about this in the earlier talk from Susan as well as Fiona. And what we do is we find that these presymptomatic stages with ongoing pathology, people stay well due to mechanisms we know as brain resilience. So we study brain resilience using neuroimaging and combination of neuroimaging techniques in large-scale human studies. So this requires an expertise in advanced statistical models and large-scale data, as well as combined with models of neurodegeneration and aging. So my expertise is really landing well into this transitioning from engineering through systems neuroscience in dementia work. In terms of career path, perhaps less traditional. I started as an engineering biomedical degree, working on magnetic resonance imaging for treatment of cancer patients. It was my first experience of realizing the impact of engineers working together with clinicians. And I knew I want to do medical technology and imaging in healthcare, particularly brain health. And so I started with a doctoral degree, not far from here, University of Birmingham, so West Midlands is really close to my heart, which was magnetic on neuroimaging in brain aging. This allowed me opportunity to start a postdoctoral degree in Cambridge, where again was a large-scale study on neuroimaging techniques, combining magnetic resonance imaging with magnetic encephalography. And this really allowed me to learn how to work with these techniques, and through their combination, to address the limitations of each technique separately. And this really laid the pathway for me for a series of fellowships, starting with a British Academy Early Career Fellowship, where I established the models of brain resilience in aging, then moving and realizing this is really necessary for dementia research with a translational fellowship funded by the Guarantors of Brain, the non-clinical fellowship. I've established evidence for brain resilience in dementia, and this now opening up opportunity for the current fellowship using these brain resilience models to understand this very early presymptomatic stage in relation to genetic and modifiable risk factors.
Brilliant. So as you can see from our panel, we've got a real variety of expertise for you to dive into in different career paths. So before we move over to questions from the audience, I have a cheeky question. Because as researchers, we're not always the best at picking out our biggest achievements. I'm going to pick on the panel to tell us what their biggest achievements are to date. So I'm going to go reverse order. So Kamen, over to you first.
One of my biggest achievements was the first evidence we found for brain resilience. Again, we used then functional magnetic resonance imaging at resting state. And this was considered by many people at that time controversial because of the data that we use, and many people arguing this may not really reflect truly neuronal changes. But what we did is we used a really novel technique to analyze the data, separate these non-neuronal versus neuronal signals, and we found indeed the first evidence for resilience. What was, I think, as a follow-up is we found a replication again and again for these initial studies. We found it across different modalities, across different analytical approaches, across different cognitive states, and as well as across different patient groups. So I guess it's the establishment of this and the replication of all these studies is something what is really novel.
Sarah?
Okay, I want to pick one that's not necessarily a scientific achievement, but I genuinely am just really thrilled to have managed to win this fellowship because it's always been my ambition to sort of establish my own dementia research group, and there have been so many barriers that have gotten in the way and could have made that something that didn't happen. And we all know how competitive funding is these days, and there is a lot of luck involved as well, but I'm just very grateful to be here and be able to continue with the research that I really, really want to do and that I'm passionate about.
I guess, from a scientific point of view, being involved in developing some of the first protocols to actually use, a lot of the work I use is human in vitro modeling, is using human iPSCs, which you might be familiar with. And it was really being given the opportunity to develop some of the first protocols that we can generate specific subtypes of neurons which are linked to diseases like Parkinson's or Alzheimer's. And in really being able to develop those protocols that are now being used quite widely, and then that I've then continued to use to characterize those cells in more detail and finding some interesting dysfunction of those cells that I'm now trying to take forward. But the other aspect I would like to highlight is, being lucky enough and having the opportunity to find good people and good labs doing very exciting research, being able to identify those places where you find good people doing interesting research that you think could not only support you, but it's also making science move forward as well. So finding that good interaction, good combination.
Again, a non-science achievement. I think my biggest achievement is probably my PhD. I embarked upon it thinking, after 4 years of being a technician, that I would never be able to achieve a PhD. How on earth, what am I going to do at the end of 3 years when it's not finished and I have no money and I can't write it up? And so being able to achieve something that you didn't think that you were capable of, I think is probably the best achievement, because it then set the scene for the tenacity that is then, and the self-belief that is then needed in the subsequent stages.
And for me, I think scientifically, I'm proud that we were one of the first groups to set up a 2-photon imaging in drug discovery context. And with that, we were the first group to simultaneously image both pre- and post-synaptic components in preclinical Alzheimer's models. Most groups, if you may know if you're in the synaptic field, looks at one or the other, but you obviously need both for a fully functioning synapse. And that was in preclinical models, and now through the Dementia Leader Fellowship, I'm now moving that work into humans. The other just quick non-scientific thing, if you like, is the people that have moved through my group, the PhDs and postdocs. I'm very proud of them and what they have gone on to achieve. So definitely them as well.
So a real mixture of both professional scientific achievements there, but also some really personal ones as well. So thank you for sharing. I'm going to open up to the floor now and see. So if anybody's got any questions for our panel, again, this can be anything on research journey, how you might approach rejection from grant applications, work-life balance, anything in that kind of vein. So you really have free reign for our panelists. So I've got a question over there with Sam, and then we'll come over here to you.
Hi. So what's a piece of advice you were given early in your career that really kind of stands out to you, one that you can really vividly remember that helped you on your path?
Who wants to start?
One piece of advice for me was share your work and your application with as many people as possible. And this includes not only collaborators, but also layman people as well.
I actually had similar advice, but slightly different from my former supervisor, Stuart Pickering-Brown, who's not with us any longer, but he was really open about the work we were currently doing, so he wasn't worried about competition. Sometimes to our detriment, perhaps, but actually I think it's a good way to live and to work, that he would happily go to conferences and meet people and just chat, this is what's going on right now. And then that leads the way to more open collaborations. And also when I was having my little panics as a PhD or a postdoc about, oh, what if they're going to scoop us on this paper? He'd just say, you can't control what the competition are doing. So you just focus on you and what you're doing. And it's sometimes harder to actually do that, but I think it's something to try and achieve.
And if you have an idea of what you want to do or where you want to go, work hard on that. I mean, if don't give up, I think it's an important aspect of this type of career, right? And a lot of the times, it's not because of you, it's not because of your science, it's because of the limitations of the system that we have, and that could be at the scientific level, in terms of publications or not, but mostly probably in terms of finance system that we have in place, right? I'm sure the society would love to fund much more projects, but at the end of the day, there is a certain amount of money. Be persistent. I mean, I applied to quite a few different fellowships. I almost got some of them, and learn to understand that it's not really up to just you. It's the system in general as well. And I completely agree. I mean, go out there, talk to people. Don't be afraid. Collaborate. If you think you might want to learn a technique or have an experience in another lab, send an email. I mean, most of the times people will be nice, right? They won't tell you off in any way. So if you want to talk to some big name, if you see them in a conference, go to the conference.
That was great. I think mine is short. It is research is a marathon and not a sprint. And so you should treat it as such.
Mine's also quite short, so take time to think. I was told that it's easy to, and we all know it, to get caught up in the day-to-day life and lab work and writing grants and papers, but if you don't just take time out to think about what you're doing, why you're doing it, then you're going to struggle.
Okay, thank you. Our second question over here.
Hi, so I'm 5 months into the Alzheimer's Science postdoctoral fellowship, and I guess I was asking for your advice, maybe your experience of the early fellowships when you're kind of transitioning to being a PI, but you're also in the lab, you're trying to have ideas, but you need to prioritise getting data, and it's managing that, and what tips you have for trying to kind of almost do everything at once.
I can start. I mean, make sure you're in agreement with your supervisor, right? Make sure they understand your career stage and what you want to do, and make sure that if you need time to do some, side projects, or if you need time to write the applications, make sure they understand and you in a good relationship at that level. So they need to give you that kind of flexibility as well. So I think that's important.
I would say block your time. So dedicate this morning, you're going to do lab work, and then that time you're going to write a paper and stick to it like it's a really important meeting. Put it in your calendar and don't let anyone cancel it.
Give yourself time, be forward thinking, know when the deadlines are, know when the next deadline is, and really plan.
I would kind of add on to what Joe said about the blocking out your time, because I still struggle with this. So I'll block out the time and then I won't stick to it because it feels like I'm putting out fires sometimes, or a student needs something or whatever it might be. But what I'm learning to do is let some things go and manage my feelings around that. So I have some strongly held limiting beliefs, I believe is the term, about the way that things should be. Like, I should reply to my emails in this amount of time, or I should respond to this situation in this time frame and in this way. And actually, it's not always that clear cut. And sometimes what's urgent, because it has a deadline, isn't actually that important. So just ignore the deadline. And it's fine. So it's learning what you can get away with and what you can't, and trying to really prioritize what's important to you and the people that you're responsible for.
I would add that, plan ahead really, and emphasize this. There are many aspects for me, my first applications, that I was not aware of. This is how much time it takes. It's like you would like to approach collaborators well in advance. You want to get support letters from head of departments, get the finance teams. This all takes really time, and just you need to do way ahead of time, beside all the research work and the research ideas you want to put in as a fantastic application.
We've got more questions. One in the middle. the mic's fighting over who gets to you first.
I just wanted to ask about building relationships with your supervisors and supervisory teams, and then navigating the complexities of altering your supervisory team as your projects progress and you realise that you need maybe a slightly different skill mix or different support. What's your experience of being able to navigate those complex social things that come along with that?
Joe, do you want to?
Yeah, I think it's a skill managing up and managing down, right? So I'm sure everyone's had a mix of supervisor styles in their time, and learning how to be a little bit firm sometimes with your supervisor to make sure that it's it's mutually beneficial, but you are getting what you need and what you want. I haven't had to change supervisors at any point. I think maybe some I should have, but I've stuck with it. But I think if it's not working for you, you need to be honest and think about where you can get those other resources from.
Yeah, getting involved with a mentoring program, I think, is also a really good, a good thing to do. Gives you an opportunity. There's many different types of mentoring programs. It could be peer-to-peer, or it could be senior to more junior, and really getting advice from people that have been in similar situations or perhaps have known other people in similar situations can maybe help make you feel you're making the right decision for you.
Yeah, I would say communication is essential, right? Just make sure that you're both on the same page. And it might come to a situation maybe you have to do some changes somehow. You might need to change to another lab or something. Hopefully don't get to that. But their reality might not be the same funding reality you're facing, right? They might have been in your position 20, 30 years ago, and the way things developed was very different. So they might have a very different view of what you need now in order to progress, right? And you need to make it very, very clear, look, this is what I'm required. I know exactly what I need to achieve, being that a paper, being that supervision, whatever you need. If you have a clear plan of what you need in order to make the next step, make sure they understand that. And it's kind of a trade-off. Sometimes you need to come to kind of a soft agreement, like, all right, I'll do this bit, but then I'll have, I will be allowed to do this bit for myself as well, right? Sometimes you might need to make those kind of arrangements if you want, and that sometimes works, I find.
Just to kind of add to that, I've in the past been quite blunt with former supervisors, and my PhD and postdoc was supervised by the same person, and we had a very good relationship, and I feel like we trusted each other, so we could just be quite blunt, and I could say, look, I need a first author paper within this time frame because I need to apply for fellowships next, or whatever it might be. Or I need an extension of this long because of these deadlines. Where can we apply for funding? And then because I came to him with a specific thing that I wanted, he would try and accommodate whatever he could, and he might have ideas. But I'd also say, I think it's unrealistic to expect one supervisor to offer everything that you need. And so this is where the mentorship thing comes in. So maybe you are working very closely and have an official supervisory role with someone who you need scientifically for whatever reason, but maybe you don't have that mentoring relationship. So just ask someone else for help. And I think a lot of us are afraid to ask people for help because we know everyone's very busy, but in my experience, everyone is so nice. And most people want to pay it forward because someone once helped them. So you want to pay it forward to the next generation. So seek out what you need from wherever you can get it.
Yeah, I have to again emphasize the mentorship scheme is very important. At my time, my PhD, then there weren't any official ones. So it was more of an informal, but nowadays I think there is a lot more opportunities. So just seek out for these. Another aspect is perhaps when you design your experiments, seek out for collaborators that could actually help you learn something new, bring into this project. And now when you discuss the progress of your project, it's not only one-to-one with your supervisor, but it's kind of in a group. So I think this sometimes helps as well.
Okay, opening back up to the floor. Oh, got a question over here, very decisive.
Hi, thank you. I think it's very good, good follow-up question, just like the last point you make. It's about sometimes you want to build a teamwork. Sometimes it could be some external colleagues from other external university, or some people could be from, in my case, from hospital. They have clinical perspective of view to contribute in the research. And sometimes, of course, PPIE is very important. So, do you have any suggestions, or according to your experience, how to work as a team to build a good research project to make the best research? Thank you.
I can kick off maybe on this one. So I've had a few years since I came back from industry leading a big multi-omics atlas project at the DRI. And so that was leading an experienced team of bioinformaticians and wet lab people. And there I found that your goals have to be crystal clear to every member of the team. So we actually used a Teams tracker, which is it's a bit like Trello. There's like loads of different versions, and having these goals and assigning them to each person, and then kind of sub goals or subtasks within them, worked really well, and everyone knew where they stood at any time. So I think that is critical when working in a team, whether you're leading it or a member of the team.
Mm-hmm. And I think in addition to that is buying into the overall goal, making sure everyone gets the same sense that they're working towards something important and they're all in it together.
Yeah, and I would add, I think it's a very important aspect. I mean, don't assume that, especially if you're working in a very diverse team in terms of what type of research they're doing, sometimes people speak almost different languages, right? You're talking about bioinformatics and wet lab. It's incredible. It's like you're not speaking the same language, right? So make sure you keep either things simple or you explain them, but make sure things are understood to the level of the needs of the project, and that has to take into account the needs of each individual as well as part of that big group, right? So if you make those things very clear from the beginning on the group that you are, that makes I think, things much easier. And if you're building a team, I would say, try to find people who are not going to kind of compete or overlap too much. Find good connections. I like to collaborate with people who do maybe the techniques I'm very interested, but they have probably very little interest on neurodegeneration or dementia, right? But they can bring out something very, very cool and exciting into the project. So it's a very win-win situation if you're trying to build a team like that. I find that quite productive.
Honestly, I don't think I have much to add to that. The small thing that I always say is that I personally try to seek collaborators or work with people in general who I think are also kind of good people that I can trust. So hopefully, once everyone's set expectations and agreed on things, that you know that it is going to move forward as discussed, and no one's going to kind of do anything underhanded.
I would add perhaps to talk to your existing network. Just speak to them and ask them for advice who might be appropriate people to join in and to add on a specific aspect in the project that you would like to expand on. And I think it's really very, very important, especially for dementia. It is to address it is a multidisciplinary teams. Building it and taking this multidisciplinary approach is a lot more important than just sticking to one specific discipline and technique.
Okay. Oh, got a question right at the front.
Mine is probably more of a personal-ish question, but how did you know you were ready to become independent? And was it an organic transition, or did you take certain steps and did you have certain conversations to get where you are?
Someone else want to start?
I think it depends. It depends on the topic. So in some cases you might be ready soon after a PhD, for example. It depends what type of research you do. In other cases you need quite a few years of postdoc experience. I would say maybe once your ideas start being quite different from your PI's ideas, and you think, and you have good ideas, you might have a lot of interesting supporting data, but the avenue of research that you and your PI want is quite starting to diverge, right? Maybe that's a good time, right? Because you're clearly showing a sign of independence, and if you really believe and you have good support for that, and you start building your network of researchers, then you start realizing, well, actually, I'm starting to do my own thing, even within the group that I'm part of, right? And naturally, in the end of the day, it's all about getting the funding as well to be able to do that. And you might need to get the funding to get the preliminary data, small pots of money for that. And that naturally you start applying. And in the end of the day is whenever you get the funding that allows you to do that transition. But you can start seeing the signs of that quite before, yeah.
I think for me, and I don't know if this is a good thing, so take this with a pinch of salt, but it was also not just being able to think independently, but expand on that thinking. So it wasn't just me that I was preparing research for it, I was also preparing something a bit bigger that other people could come on board with. That was it for me, really.
I think for me, I was, because I started in industry as a postdoc and then progressed, I was kind of given more and more responsibility, and then realised that actually I can do this and I really enjoy doing it. So I guess that it was a bit more, it kind of grew organically, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think it is just a sudden step and change from working with someone and becoming an independent. I think it's a fluid process that develops. I think during your doctoral degree and postdoctoral degree, I think you want to be really open to as many experiences and techniques as possible. This would give you perhaps a better idea and foundation for you how to find your niche, because to me it was really the problem, how to find my niche, working with all these people, and then how I can make myself distinct and not stepping over boundaries. So this was a process that was not just over a day.
For me, and I'm going to turn things perhaps slightly negative, being pragmatic, I need a job, money's running out. It's time to apply for a junior fellowship. And I can be quite self-critical, so I don't always notice I'm doing it, and I wasn't sure I was ready, and actually it was my postdoc supervisor who convinced me, no, you are. Let's focus on you getting a junior fellowship rather than putting in project grants to keep you for another postdoc. So I didn't have that strong belief at first, and then as I started putting my application together, I actually kind of realized, I've done a lot of stuff, and and I do have ideas, and maybe. So yeah, like it's a process, right? But the money's running out, so I need a job.
Sorry, I'll just add, some of these fellowships have a specific requirement in terms of how many years after PhD and stuff. I mean, sometimes you need to be pragmatic, right? It's just, this is the time because this is the only opportunity I will have. Try to figure out, do I have a chance, talk to people and see, but that kind of decided by them rather than you.
Okay, any more questions on the floor? Oh, one at the right at the front with Alan.
I may get thanked for this, I may not get thanked for it. Do you have one tip with regards to the lay summary for people? Because you would have been through it during your journey. We are research network volunteers. We look at things from that angle. Do you have one tip that is really going to help people with regards to that lay summary that either helped you along or is going to help them out? Thank you.
2 tips. Remember what it's like to have to Google something as you write your sentences, because we all had to do it at some point, change those words that you need to Google. And if you have a public engagement team within your school or within your institute, get in touch with them because they've got great advice and can input and help with any lay summary and reports that you have to write.
Start as soon as you can. I thought it was one of the most difficult things I had to do, was be able to communicate that science. You probably can talk scientifically about what you do to a group of people who understand what you're doing very, very easily. and it's so much more difficult. And I struggled in the beginning quite a lot. And it was just by doing repetition, sharing that with family, friends, people affected, or carers, for example, and really trying to get any sort of tips, right? If you see workshops, if you see across the university or across different societies and stuff, try to get all those small bits of information. And again, if you haven't done it, start as soon as you can, because it's very, very important.
I think mine would be, don't get too bogged down in the details, because as scientists, we want to tell you everything specific about our experiments. And you have to think, what does your audience actually care about? And at least in my experience, I understand that a lot of the lay reviewers, they want to know the big picture things, and how is this actually going to help people living with dementia that may not be tomorrow or in a few years, it may be decades away, but they want to hear what could be that pathway to translation, how could this actually benefit real people. And also just, I didn't struggle too much writing mine, but I think that's because I'd done tons of public engagement work, often with Alzheimer's Society, during my PhD and postdocs, where I'd strongly encourage any ECRs that are interested in developing your lay-com skills to just, give Sian or whoever an email. She will send you places, and you will do things, and you will learn through experience.
Yeah, get opportunities to present your work to venues and other engagements. I think it's the annual lecture, for example. There is the University of Third Age. They do also seminars. Just go and present your work to layman audiences. As well as for me, I also try to present my work and give my layman summaries to my family members. If they can understand that, then probably that's a one step closer to someone else able to understand it.
For me, there are websites that you can put in your lay summary, and it'll tell you the reading age of what you've used. And I remember doing it for my Dementia Research Leader Fellowship. And often, if you read the small print of the grant, the application, it says, okay, this should be appropriate for a reading age of 14. And you can put it into this website, and it will tell you. And mine came out at age 25 or something. And then you've got a bit of work to do, and it tells you you've got too many, 4-syllable words or whatever. That saved me, basically.
Okay, so we're going to unfortunately wrap there because we are running out of time. I guess just to sort of resonate some of the sentiments that have been shared, particularly by Sarah and Kamen, if you are interested in doing any form of lay comms, Alzheimer's Society would love to have you. So you can drop me an email, come and talk to any member of the Alzheimer's Society team today and let us know. We'll follow up with you by email. But we have lots of opportunities for you to share your research with lots of different audiences. So whether it's written or whether it's speaking. So please do get in touch with us or talk to any researchers who've done it for us and hopefully had a good experience. Also on lay writing, that does segue us beautifully into the grant writing panel workshop that we're running later on this afternoon. So please do keep that in mind for the questions for panelists there as well. But I just want to thank all of our fantastic panelists for joining us today and for you as an audience for contributing such thoughtful and brilliant questions. There's still lots of things that I imagine you want to talk to our panelists about, and we're very happy to say that we've got another opportunity for you to grill our panelists at the roundtable events later on this afternoon as well. So if you've got any more burning questions, please do come up to any of our panelists and ask them. But in the wrap up of this session, a big round of applause for our panelists, please.